Hi, this is Chris from Grinding Gear Games.
Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games.
Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So, we've had some unfortunate news that Chris Wilson is no longer a director of GGG. Now, what we don't know at this stage is whether or not he's still employed under some sort of like advisory contract or something of that nature. But, I think I express the same sentiment that everybody across the whole of the community expresses in saying that, the reason why Path of Exile is what Path of Exile is today is because Chris was the driving force behind it. And I was there at the first ExileCon and saw where he got emotional on stage and everything else in between. And he was a dude that just genuinely cared about his video game that he made in his garage, all those many years ago. Hence the very first video that I put a bit of an extract up, and I'll put a link to in the description. But yeah, I think I'm not sure where the direction is moving forwards. Like, obviously, Path of Exile will be fine. PoE 2 will continue to progress and whatnot under the new guys that are now running the show. But I definitely will say it is telling that with Path of Exile 2, that same feeling that we had with Path of Exile 1 originally in beta just doesn't seem to be there. Though that could be something that happens over time as the game progresses and gets a bit better. Anyway, I just wanted to cover off on that briefly because it is pretty much the highest on the list level of news at this point in time about, Path of Exile and the state of and whatnot. But, if Chris clicks on these videos, thank you for all the years of awesome ARPG-ness, and we definitely will miss, Chris's catchphrase and meme saying at the very start of an announcement for a league. And it's a little disappointing that, we did get a decade, just over a decade plus of having Chris at the helm of the game for Path of Exile 1, but it would have been nice to see him involved in Path of Exile 2. But, fingers crossed, everything goes to plan and everything works well for Chris in the long run. But yeah, anyway, that being said, let's get into the news for Path of Exile 2 that got released today as well. Okay, so after a long-awaited hiatus in news, just in particular because, I think there's comments across the community is that Path of Exile 2 is on fire. Basically, we got an update on the 0.2.0 content update, and they expect it to be approximately 1 month away as the ETA. Now, this is pretty good timing because this is the event distance for Legacy of Frisia, which opens up at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. And if you follow the channel and the streams, I'll be streaming at 6 a.m. I got the day off work, and we're going to be playing Bone Shatter on the Ancestral Commander. But basically, in the lead up, they'll be running a series of race events in Path of Exile 2, starting from the 2nd of March. They'll be open to everybody, based here. While races are open, the purpose of them is to crown players that are willing to prove themselves against others. This is something that they sort of tried with Path of Exile 1, and it was definitely something that was really popular. It actually really started with the Exile cons, and on the last day of the event, there would be a race to like the I think it's Act 5 Katava, Act 4 Katava, Act 5 Katava, and it was pretty amusing because you'd see some pretty crazy stuff. Now there is going to be a leaderboard ladder for this as well. And basically, it's just going to be the same as any other league. And this is sort of potentially them testing some of the league configurations and whatnot in the game as well. So I would say this is a double up for them to test systems. And so basically, they've got the event times. There's 3 races that are going on the 3rd of March, 10th of March, and 17th of March. Unfortunately, I will be away, so I probably won't be participating in the race. Maybe we might participate in the race just for a bit of fun. I'm definitely not the fastest player in the world because I like tanks, and there's probably going to be like Havoc or someone like that at the very forefront of everything. Now, the cool thing is the Demigod's virtually unique item. And usually this is like an item or a skin that you can like transfer, and it becomes a pretty cool legacy item, and this is what it looks like here. So we'll just play it through. So yeah, it's just a really dope item. And basically, this is going to be doled out to each class that hits in top placement. So that means there's only going to be, 6 characters times 3 per each of the event, times by the different league styles like hardcore, whatever. that are going to get awarded this. So only a handful of players are going to be able to actually acquire this item. And forever and a day, it's basically just a big flex to say that you were there at the start and you won a race event and whatnot. They've got future events will include other classes when they're added to early access as well, and they'll be probably doing a number of different events, trying to dole out some early demigods and stuff like that. And they also note here, as they do more race events in the future, they'll cycle through the demigods items, so probably like gloves and all the rest of it. They'll eventually represent an entire armor set, including weaponry, so you might be able to collect the entire set if you're good enough. There'll probably be 1 or 2 players that do that. Upon conclusion of the race, removing the stash tab will be added into your core league, where you can choose to remove the items from the tab and equip it, or show it off and whatnot, so you can put it across your different characters. 25% increased rarity of items found virtuous. Not too sure what that actually means, but anyway, it's pretty cool. There's also a laptop up for grabs. I don't really worry about this stuff because the chance of me winning it is just not there. But it's cool that, you know, they're sort of hosting these events and whatnot, and this will all be on Twitch. Look, I think this is a good way to garner player engagement, and I think the time that I guess this announcement series up to Legacy of Frisia has sort of allowed is for them to actually have a breathe and reorganize themselves a little bit. Basically, what had been happening over the, I guess, the last, you know, since early January, mid-January, is there was a bit of stagnation. There wasn't really any engagement with the community. I feel like Legacy of Frisia is the first time that they've really had like very hefty engagement with the community for a little while. Like they sort of went away on the Christmas break and they sort of left Path of Exile 2 as it was. And the problem with doing that over Christmas and generally in IT, you don't deploy over the Christmas break for that exact reason. So they sort of fell into a bit of an industry pitfall with that one, with trying just to get the game out. I'm hoping there's a lot of changes that come in the 0.2.0 content update. We're probably going to get 2 classes in it, being the Druid and the Huntress, so lightning spears are hopefully going to be a thing. Definitely going to be having to play around with builds with that. I feel like since we've got a lot of the tools that we have, like Poe Ninja and stuff like that, it's going to make it a hell of a lot easier to craft like League Start builds and all that sort of stuff. So I'm getting more excited about Path of Exile 2, because we're actually getting the resources that we need to do stuff in Path of Exile now. It makes it feel more like a Path of Exile game. There's definitely 2 camps. There's a camp that just wants to click on, you know, a character and play a build as it is, and there's the camp that sort of sits on my side, which is like we want to be able to plan out and play, you know, with a bit of an educated method. And there's nothing wrong with both methods, but at a certain point in time, those tools become more important, because at the end of the day, it is a Path of Exile game. Whether or not you like it, those tools are basically the bread and butter of what makes the game. As to whether or not they should be built into the game, I sort of like the fact that they're not built into the game, but I understand the argument that says, oh, they should just be built into the game as well. And maybe they might be, but at this stage, I think what we really need in the game is a hell of a lot more balance or against build variety and diversity. At the moment, if you're running Archmage or Hoa, that's basically the 2 main builds that everybody's running, and that's quite problematic. I think things like locking auras or aura skills to weapons, like martial weapons and stuff, isn't necessarily going to create much diversity either. And so, sort of, these are some of the things that they need to have a think about, like being able to put, you know, Herald of Ice with maces. You can do that now, but make that more efficient is probably something to consider. But anyway, I'm hoping with this patch there's a lot of changes. The end game, more so than anything else, needs a total overhaul. And one of the biggest issues with the end game is just the mapping system is not very good. And the progression of that mapping system doesn't feel very fluid. It's clunky. And also the mapping and the, you know, the on-death effects in maps and, you know, the high-risk play and all that sort of stuff doesn't feel like a lot of fun, especially now that the welcome is wearing out and the game is sort of progressing down the line. Obviously, it still has a pretty high player base. It sits at about, I think, 70 to 80,000 right now and peaks at about 100k per day. But it's still a pretty significant drop-off. Now, will a lot of players come back? They probably will on the 0.2.0 patch, but I think what we're going to see is that player base just isn't going to creep back up until the final release now, because people have had their fill and they're probably moving on to other things like, you know, the Banished and stuff like that. It's coming out. The Vowed, which is quite a good game from what I understand. So those sort of I guess, flavor of the month players are probably not going to come back to the game, and so we're going to start to see the real player numbers start to come out with this patch and for the preceding patches after this. Anyway, so overall, it's good news. It's a big update. It's a big announcement. There really isn't like a lot of breadth to this. Doing like a crazy video saying this is the biggest announcement ever, that's just bait. Yep, we're going to get a content update, and we'll follow that as we get the patch notes and the content information and stuff like that. Really interested to see what they do to change the game, make it a little more fun. I think that is the unanimous comment across the board as well, is right now Path of Exile 2 just lacks that element of fun that PoE 1 has and other ARPGs have. And so it's sort of like a really grindy game, and yeah, it's hard, and for people who like that, that's great. But for the vastest wide community that really want to get into the game, it's a bit of a barrier to entry, and also just, you know, you play ARPGs for that power fantasy and fun that you get from them. So, you know, that's my take on it. My stance is the game's cool, and it's got a lot of potential, but it's just lacking that fun element right now that we need in the game. And also Delve, obviously. If it had Delve, then, you know, I'd be playing it like nothing else. But yeah, anyway, until next time. Don't forget to like and sub to the channel, and yeah, I'll be putting out hopefully a curation video in the next few hours for Legacy of Frisia. Got a few builds on the list, and good luck tomorrow morning with the event. Anyway, I'll see you guys then. Have a good one.